Here's a question for you. Who do you absolutely love spending time with? Whether it's meeting up to eat, to walk, play golf, talk theology, watch a game or a show, or simply compare parenting strategies, who is somebody you really enjoy being around? Now, think about this. What did you think of that person when you first met them? Now, I realize this isn't possible for everyone. If you said that you absolutely love spending time with your mom or your grandpa, which is awesome, by the way, you probably won't remember your first impression of them. But if you answered by saying one of your friends, or if you can think of a close friend right now, you may have a funny story about how you had a horrible first impression of them back in the day. You may absolutely love them now, but you didn't feel great about them at first. On the other hand, maybe they didn't like you when they first met you, and now you're one of their best friends. My sister-in-law is one of my closest friends. I am truly blessed to have her as a family member. I love my brother, and I love that he's married to her. Anytime she and I get to spend one-on-one time together, we have a great time, and I absolutely love it. But that wasn't, however, the case when we first met. I had heard that she and my brother were dating, and I remember finally getting a chance to meet her. I'll admit, my protective guard was up. I'm not sure that I had a ton of confidence in my brother's dating choices, so I probably went in with some preconceived ideas. But after that first meeting, I decided that she wasn't good enough for my brother. I made that judgment in a very short amount of time. By the time that she and I hung out a second time, that first impression changed drastically. She and I became close quickly, and these days I can't imagine my life or our family without her. See, first impressions are tricky. What we think about someone early on doesn't tell the whole picture. In fact, sometimes we come to realize we were just plain wrong in our view of someone else. There may have been a time when we didn't even like them, and now they're one of our favorite people in the world. We have first impressions about Jesus as well. We hear certain things about him growing up, either from family members or friends, or through a Christian TV channel. Maybe we're taught certain things about him at church or by a grandparent. Maybe we have our own gut reactions or opinions about Jesus, and we're not even sure how they were formed. Maybe we've never thought about it before, but a lot of us have different views of Jesus. There's some picture or idea that comes to mind when we think of him. But what if our view of him is off? What if it's off just slightly? Or what if it's way off? Wouldn't it be important for us to recognize that? Maybe some of us see him as church Jesus. We're Christians, we love Jesus, and we know that he loves us. We know all the right answers to all the religious questions, but in reality, that's about it. Jesus is for church. Otherwise, he's way more theoretical than he is relational or real. Maybe some of us see him as emergency Jesus. He's there for us when we need something. We toss up a quick prayer when we need to get that job, find that parking spot, or get out of trouble, or get over that sickness. Or what about vending machine Jesus? He's another version of this. We lean in when we need something. Otherwise, we're good. Maybe some of us see him as Judge Jesus. This was the view of Jesus I grew up with. He works exclusively through guilt. He's always watching and waiting for us to get our act together. And is he consistently disappointed in us? You better believe it. I could continue this list by talking about safety net Jesus, bodyguard Jesus, distant Jesus, and parent Jesus, but you get the idea. I don't point out these things to make a joke out of them or to make anyone else feel bad. It's natural and normal for us all to have different views of Jesus. But it's also important for us to question if our view is right and accurate, because the way we view Jesus shapes the way we think he views us. For example, if you see him as Judge Jesus, then you'll naturally assume that he's always mad at you. How we see him is a really big deal. And that, my friends, brings us to the last chapter of this incredible letter that we've been studying the past few weeks. We've been looking at a New Testament book called Philippians. It was a letter written by the Apostle Paul to a church in a town called Philippi. This was one of the first of many churches that Paul planted and started, so the Philippians had a special place in his heart. The theme of Paul's letter is this: because of Jesus, you and I can live at an elevated level. We can rise above our circumstances and have joy even when things aren't going the way we intended, wanted, expected, or hoped. It's a habit that can be formed just like any other good habit. It's about our focus and perspective. And Paul definitely practiced what he preached. Today, we're going to wrap up this series by looking at pieces of chapter 4, which starts with these words from Paul. Therefore, my brothers and sisters, you whom I love and long for, my joy and crown, stand firm in the Lord in this way, dear friends. Paul was so encouraging, right? But it wasn't always this way. Earlier in his life, Paul was a much different guy. And if you had met him during his earlier years, you probably wouldn't have liked him. He was a religious extremist who harshly judged people who didn't see things the way that he did. He even oversaw the persecution of some of his own countrymen because they believed differently than him. He thought he was doing what God wanted him to do. But then he met Jesus. And if you had the chance to meet Paul after he met Jesus, you probably would have loved him. Paul was a kind man who deeply loved those around him. He was honest and not afraid to speak his mind, but was willing to admit his mistakes and made no attempts to hide his less than perfect past. He was gentle with the broken, but firm with those who thought they had it all together. While before Jesus, Paul reminded people of the ways they didn't measure up. After Paul got to know Jesus, he boldly announced to people that God loved them just as they were. And what made the difference? Jesus. An encounter with the real Jesus, not the God Paul thought he knew. Paul encountered the resurrected Jesus on a journey to Damascus, and it changed everything about him. Paul got to know the real Jesus, which is why Paul found so much joy in him. That's why Paul wrote things like this: rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. The old Paul would have never said that. Paul also wrote this: let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Paul was like, Jesus is near. He's close. We can live in his presence. Isn't that so incredible and amazing? In his old life before Jesus, he had seen God as a far-off, distant judge. But then he encountered the up-close and personal, loving, powerful Jesus. And Paul found joy in that closeness. What if you could really trust this in your walk with Jesus? What if you saw him as up close and personal? What if you found joy in your relationship with him? What if you saw him as a God who not only loves you, but also likes you? And just like Paul, we can exchange our preconceived view of a distant God for an up-close and personal Savior. And when we do this, we can find the joy of being close to Jesus. Paul wrote Philippians while he was under house arrest. He was separated from the people he loved, but he had joy. Because in every situation he was in, good or bad, he knew that Jesus was right there with him because the Lord is near. Isn't it amazing that you and I can be confident of this very same thing? Jesus is your friend, and you can find joy in knowing that he's always with you and he'll never, ever leave you. As we wrap up this series and the Philippians letter, let's look at a few closing statements. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Paul found joy in the fact that Jesus was close and wanted Paul to bring all of his requests to him. The stuff that was going great, the stuff that was going awful, his prayers for other people and his prayers for himself, the stuff that he needed, the stuff that he selfishly wanted. Paul could tell Jesus about all of it because he knew that Jesus was close and that he cared about all of it. And you and I can do the very same thing. Bring your situations to Jesus, your work, your family, your friends, your marriage, your hurts, your drama, every bit of it. He's near and he wants to help you. Then Paul concluded by writing and saying to keep our thoughts fixed on elevated things. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. This is a great list, isn't it? Paul was saying, think about things that are honest, respectable, kind, and enjoyable. Why did Paul find it necessary to write this? And not only write it, but leave it as a part of the closing instructions for his letter? Because his readers had a choice. Just like they could focus on what was wrong or negative or dirty or mean, they could also focus on what was good. That's what joy is. It's a choice you and I can make each and every day. It's a habit we can form and a muscle we can build. You can choose to focus on Jesus, the real Jesus, not judge Jesus or emergency Jesus or even church Jesus. The up close and personal Jesus who loves you and likes you. You can keep your eyes on him. You can also choose to focus on things that are joyful and, like Paul, focus on living at an elevated level. Think back to the beginning of this talk. Remember how we mentioned the people we love spending time with? And remember how, for some of you, it wasn't like that when you first met them. But over time, as you got to know them better, you began to enjoy and appreciate them. The same will happen as you walk with Jesus. As you begin to live in his presence, knowing that he is near, you'll begin to enjoy him even more. So find the joy of being close to Jesus. It will take time, but it's totally worth it. And I promise you that you'll be so happy that you did.